Hi, my name is Bart Tutaj. We'll now be kicking off with the Advanced Email Design Workshop. We'll look at making your emails work for all of your recipients efficiently and in the best possible way. We'll be covering a number of important points, from accessibility to using buttons effectively and making sure your logos look great in your emails. Without further ado, I'll be going into the perils of a live demonstration, so we'll switch out of the presentation now. We'll be starting off with accessibility. We need to make sure that all of your audience can access your emails comfortably, be that a sufficient font size, whether they're using a screen reader. We need to make sure that your message caters for everybody in the right way. We'll be looking at the right font size, the right font color, and we'll be looking at the use of headings too. Here we can see a clear welcome title in your email design. We'll take a look at this. It's a nice clear font, and it's clearly visible against the background as well. As we can see, its size has been set to 58, and it's a heading 1. It's a good idea to use headings in your emails. Not only does it make it easier for your readers to actually digest the email in the order it's intended, it helps screen readers make sense of it for audience who might be partially sighted or blind too. Down below, we can see a slightly smaller subheading. That's set to a slightly smaller font, but again, it's 36 and it's a clear font color against the background. Always aim to keep your font at size 14 or larger to make sure everyone can read it. Any smaller, it will become difficult to read. In addition to that, make sure that the colors are clearly accessible. For this, we'll be looking at a fantastic tool called Web Aim Contrast Checker. Here we've got this open in another tab, and we can see that this shade of blue does not meet accessibility guidelines against a white background. If you were to change this to a royal blue, we can see it passes the accessibility guidelines on all levels. And now back to the Smart Editor in eShot. Next up, we'll be looking at optimizing your padding. This is a fantastic way to make sure your emails look clean in desktop mode and at the same time accessible and easy to read in mobile as well. If we take a look at where we've got the welcome title, we can see that is placed within a structure of its own. We click into this area and then we refer to the right-hand panel where we can make adjustments. We'll be looking at the padding. We will use the More switch to fine-tune our padding. And here we can make this charming welcome email look a little bit more like the recent templates we've got for our users of the Smart Editor and give it that little bit of extra padding to make it look very clean indeed. I'm now increasing the left padding as well as the right padding. However, in mobile, this might give the text a little less space to appear, so we'd want to reduce the amount of padding in mobile. We click on the mobile version and reduce the padding, reduced on left and reduced on right as well. In addition to that, we can change the top padding and the bottom padding too. I'll take those top and bottom paddings back to the way they were before. What is also possible is to edit the padding within the block. By this, I mean the content that sits inside the structure. Here we have a text block, and if we were to select that, we'll be taken on to different settings that you can see in the right-hand panel. Here, we can switch on more padding again and change the left and right as we need. We've got the granularity of being able to change the mobile version in the text blocks too. We'll now change that back to the way it was before. That's fantastic. We'll go through the other one as well. And as we can see, we can quickly make this change to the way we need it exactly. Not forgetting to change the padding on the mobile version. And remember, when it comes to you proofing your email design, always preview it in mobile as well as on desktop to make sure that your mobile viewers get the best experience. There will be quite a number of them. Related to padding, there's a little bit of extra you can do for a button, which is well worth knowing about. With a button such as the one you see here, you've got the padding around the structure and in the block of the element as well, the actual button block. The padding you are used to, that we've just discussed in this particular button, can be found down at the very bottom of the right-hand settings panel and is referred to as external padding. Let me change a few settings here for you. Left and right. And here we can see that we are changing the padding of the button as we had done before. We can also adjust top and bottom as mentioned. I will now go and reset the right and left padding to what they had been earlier. In addition to that, we can change the internal padding of the button. This gives you more flexibility to brand your button exactly the way you want it for your email. Here, we can again increase the left and right padding to make that appear differently and the way you want it to be. We'll now take that back to the way it was before. And hopefully that will help you get you on your way to padding your emails effectively and making them look great for all your audience, regardless whether they use desktop or mobile. We will now look at responsive images. Very briefly, this is very useful to make sure that your images look great, again, regardless of what kind of device somebody uses. It could be a tablet, it could be a mobile. A responsive image, make sure that your images look great regardless, as long as it's the right type of image. Here, we've got a lovely header image. If we click on that, and again refer to the right-hand panel, we can see that in the responsive image setting, responsive image is switched on. This means that it will grow or shrink to fit the space in a mobile view. In this case, it's a full width banner. It will shrink to comfortably fit the space in a mobile view. If, however, you have a small image, such as an icon or a small company logo for a partner, for example, you would want it to stay the same size on desktop as well as mobile. In that instance, you would want to switch off responsive image so it does not grow to a large and obscure size on a mobile view. And this should help you get you on your way to making a fantastic looking email with various images looking exactly the right size. You'll definitely want to switch responsive image on for a forward banner. The next thing to look at is buttons in your email. Here we've got a fantastic small welcome email. And for promotional emails or welcome emails such as these, a tip you might find interesting is to make your buttons look round on Outlook on Windows. This is quite an old platform which doesn't behave with styling round buttons in the usual way. So there's an extra little trick in this fantastic smart editor to help get you on your way. If we head over to Appearance the first time, this gives you a string of extra options. We'll look at them gently one by one. Here we are heading over to the button option. This will open a number of options, and nearer the top, you can see a switch called Support of Outlook. If I were to switch this on, that will allow the rounded corners of your button to show on Outlook on Windows. Again, this is fantastic for shorter emails. There is, however, more information to find out about this. Switching this option on can increase the size of your email significantly, making it take longer to load and potentially causing a user problem for your readers, especially if you use longer newsletters. If you do distribute longer newsletters, it is worth switching off support for Outlook to keep your emails easy to download and quick to read for your readership. Next, we'll continue looking at buttons although we'll be adding something which is potentially very useful to give them a little bit of enhancement. If I were to click on this structure containing the button, go into the block of the button, we are now taken out of the Appearance tab, as you can see on the top right, and into the Content tab. We will copy this button, select it, and then again, if we refer to the right-hand side, we scroll down, you'll see there's a lot of options for the button. There is an option for button with icon. If we were to switch that on, we can see it is possible to add an icon to the left or to the right side of your button. Here we'll be sticking with the right-hand side, and if I were to go into my folder, find my right arrow quote chevron, and drag that into the appropriate box, we can see we've added that image to the button to make it more effective, and you can brand them beautifully that way to exactly the way you need in your messages. The next section I'll be covering will be working with your main company logo at the top of your email. Here we have an instance of the eShot logo neatly tucked away in the top left corner of the design. What I've frequently seen happening with some email designs is the following. I'll copy this particular structure, select that logo, and this allows me to manipulate the properties of this logo. I often see a logo, for instance, 350 pixels wide and in the center. And this setting would apply to both desktop and mobile. However, it was originally set to just 100 pixels wide, nice and neat, left aligned, and make sure it's left aligned on both desktop and mobile. Now we have a redundant structure which we don't need. We can easily delete the whole structure and keep our message looking tidy. That's some great advice for company logos, keeping your email looking much tidier and getting your audience to your main message quicker. We'll now be looking at modules and things to look out for them, which are quite specific. We will start by adding a brand new structure. Coloring it appropriately. Let's set the background color of the structure to match the rest of the message. And then we pop in the text that we need. And add the padding in the structure to make it look appropriate too. And there we've got our structure ready to save as a module. You use the Save as Module option to do that. Give it a module name. And save that as a module. This will retain all the padding that you set up for both the structure and the block inside of the structure for both desktop and mobile, just as you have it. However, there's an interesting thing to note. The specific text size will be whatever has been set up in the appearance for that particular section of your email, which we will look at shortly. At the moment, in this particular section of the email, which is content, the text size is set to 16. If I were to remove this particular structure here and take a look at our Appearance tab on the right-hand side again, head over to Stripes and look at the content, which I was referring to, we can see that the text size is set to 16 currently. What I will do is change that to something rather large to give that differentiation to 48. Now, if I were to head back into content and find the module I had created, if I were to drag that module into place, we can see that the text, this is a paragraph, is absolutely huge according to the text size change I made for the content section in our email. That's something to look out for when saving modules. They are very handy indeed, especially when you are aware of how they work specifically. They can really help you get your email built much more quickly and efficiently, as long as you are aware of how they work specifically. Next up, we will be looking at working with stripes in Smart Editor. These are fantastic at helping you section your email up and getting a great looking message to your audience in much less time, especially if you work with similar messages from one week to the next. If we take a look at this message, we can see it is divided into the stripe, into the content stripe, and further down, we have a footer stripe. What this message would benefit from would be a header stripe to separate out the header content. Let's have a look at how that can work. Here on stripe level, in the gray background of the message, we have a plus icon. We select this, and for the purpose of this message, a single column stripe is perfect. We select that, and now we are presented with a stripe which we can move to the position of our choosing. I'll use the 3 dots to find the move handle, and with a little bit of practice, move that up to the very top of the message. That's perfect. Then what I can do is, again, click in the gray space outside of the body content of the message and find out what the stripe is currently set to be. It's set to be content, but we want to give that separation and call it header. We'll take a look at what that means in just a moment. Here, we make our selection to call the stripe header, and we can see it's made some adjustments. Those adjustments are in place according to what has been set up in our Appearance tab. Before we look into that, let's move the logical content that we need into the header stripe. Let's start off with the structure that contains the logo. You click on the move icon, hold it down, and drag it into the appropriate place. Similarly, for the structures that contain the heading and subheading, drag those into place. Absolutely fantastic. We've got what we need and it's all set up in the right way. We now have a redundant structure which was set up when we started the stripe, which we can remove. And that looks perfect. If I were to click on header, we can find out more about this particular structure, as mentioned, by clicking on Appearance. Here we can see how this header is set up with its text size, background color, and other features you would find handy. There's more for content, footer, and something we haven't used but is potentially very handy for your structure info area as well. What's important to bear in mind here is that for mobile, the contents of your structure might look different. Here we have a number of things which we can look at in terms of mobile formatting. We've got the size of the header text, the content text, and this is the way your stripes will appear in the mobile view. Oftentimes we have customers asking, my mobile view has text which looks like a different size. This is the area of the powerful Smart Editor in which it's controlled. You can also adjust things such as the heading sizes in a granular way and the way your button looks too. Next up, we'll be looking at something a number of people find very handy, which has very powerful features, but well worth going into in brevity, which is a countdown timer. I will head over to content. Usefully, I'll add another structure just for my timer, make sure that's set up correctly. and get that appropriate background color in for that as well. We will look at using the timer block. Move that over and drop that into place. We need to click on the block once we've added it into the designer, and then we can choose a future date and time to set up the timer for. There are a number of adjustments which can be made. By default, in this particular template, the timer is set to Open Sans, fantastic font. Sans serif makes it very easy to read on the screen. Best to avoid something like Times unless it's very large indeed and it matches your brand. Increase the font size. Make sure that the colors are appropriate. You can choose whether to display days or not. If something's a brief countdown timer for the next day, just the hours might suit. You can have the number labels or not. Definitely helpful information to have those switched on. And you can change the separator, for instance, from a colon to a full stop. We clicked outside of a box to make sure that those changes get put into place. Fantastic. There we've got our countdown timer set up. And indeed for this one, we do want to display the days. Best to keep that simple. Here's a piece of advice. If you were to save and clone this message and then edit the countdown timer in your clone, the countdown timer in the clone actually makes a reference to exactly the same place as your original countdown timer is. So updating your cloned countdown timer will update your original one as well. In this instance, the best thing to do is to simply remove the countdown timer and add it again. If you've kept the settings simple, as have been done with this one, it's easy to get that back into place and working as a new countdown timer. Finally, we'll be looking at column handling. This can be found in the structures, and here you can see we've got multiple column structures available. Here, we'll be adding a 2-column structure. There's lots of options here. Frequently, I get customers asking, I would like 2 images next to each other for my design, and I would like them to have no space between them. I need that flexibility of handling them in 2 separate columns. This can certainly be done by reducing the indent in between containers to 0. If you're looking at making these containers an equal size, once you've made some adjustments, you can use the equalize option to get them an equal size. There are some other great options specifically for 2-column containers, which work on many of the others. Here, we can say whether we want a responsive structure or not. At times, even on a mobile view, you will want one piece of content on the right and another on the left. And if you switch off responsive structure, this will allow you to keep your left and right structure on mobile as well as on desktop. If the responsive structure is switched on, these will respond to keep the left-handmost content at the top and the right-handmost at the bottom. Specifically for 2-column containers, there is an option of containers inversion on mobile. If I were to switch this on, that will allow the right-hand content to stack on top and the left-hand content to appear on the bottom, which is a fantastic option for certain designs. And in fact, our watches template uses just this technology, which is really useful as it keeps things looking very, very pleasant on mobile if you were to use a checkerboard layout for your columns. In a nutshell, hopefully you found that the tips in this particular webinar have helped you compose messages which are both efficient from a time perspective and very accessible to your audience as well, making a great impression whether they consume your material on desktop or mobile or in fact tablet. I will now open up the room to any questions anyone might have.